if we want to get to the bottom of violence, political violence, division, and hatred that leads to violence, that might lead to retribution if this is not handled properly, don't we have an obligation to talk to all of us, not just to talk to one part of the country?
I think that's what you saw tonight.
Abby Phillips of CNN had Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks and MAGA right-winger Tony Gonzalez on as part of her panel to discuss the death of Charlie Kirk and the rhetoric that's been surrounding that. Why don't we take a look at this clip? I think Abby Phillips does a great job. People have some complicated feelings about Anna Kasparian, but I think she makes pretty clear, solid points here. Why don't we watch together? I'll have some opinions, and then I want to know what you think in the comments. Let's check it out.
Tonight, Donald Trump puts the blame to the political left for Charlie Kirk's assassination, even as the manhunt for his killer continues.
Are you concerned for your own safety?
Not really. I'm really concerned for our country. We have a great country. We have a radical left group of lunatics out there, just absolute lunatics, and we're going to get that problem solved. I'm only concerned for the country. Yeah.
As we were just discussing, that is a narrative that really kind of leans into the divide that now we know from the governor of Utah, foreign entities are really interested in exploiting. But for President Trump, it's not surprising. But in this moment, it feels like pouring gasoline on the fire in a way.
It is. I think Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, has tried to set the right tone where we need to look to the better angels of our nature. We need to remember that we are not enemies, but friends. We're in a dangerous place as a country. Political violence is rising. And President Trump has a responsibility to the office to try to unite rather than divide. And when he puts the focus solely on the left, after pardoning the January 6th folks, for example, you get an asymmetry that's more likely to encourage violence than to tamp it down. We need to stop this. Political violence is always unacceptable, and we're in a dangerous place as a country. We need to wake up.
Congressman, there were so many tensions on the Hill this week over this, and it really just showed there's a lack of trust, there's a lot of anger, and there's understandable anger and sadness, especially from your conservative colleagues. I don't know if you've been on the Hill earlier today, I mean, is that improving any, or is it still as tense as it seems?
Well, one, you got to understand that Congress is a microcosm of the United States, right? So there's a lot of tension within the United States. I would argue that the president is right here, and he's right for blaming the left, because just look at the facts. The facts are the school shooter in Minnesota was a left-wing lunatic. The facts are the school shooter in Tennessee was a left-wing lunatic. So these shooters are more and more becoming these radical leftists. So when the president says that, he's not wrong. I can guarantee you this. President Trump is going to hunt down and find the killer of Charlie Kirk. And if he's not dead already, he's going to bring him to justice. And we should all be rooting for him, because this has rocked the foundation of our republic. When you don't have First Amendment rights, regardless of if somebody's left-leaning or right-leaning, it absolutely destroys the fabric of our nation.
I just want to note, though, I mean, you cannot omit, just a couple months ago, Democratic Minnesota state representatives were assassinated.
By a left-wing lunatic.
No, not by a left-wing lunatic. And so I do think that the point everybody is trying to make is that if we want to get to the bottom of violence, political violence, division, and hatred that leads to violence, that might lead to retribution if this is not handled properly, don't we have an obligation to talk to all of us, not just to talk to one part of the country?
I think that's what you saw tonight, right? The reason why we had this press conference was to put everybody's eyes to find this killer, right? And needed everybody, regardless of who was tuning in or not. The sooner we find this murderer, the better this country is. And if we don't find it, it'll be at a detriment to everybody.
Sure. I mean, this Tony Gonzalez he's indicative of all MAGA right now in politics. Abby Phillip is exactly right when she's saying that Donald Trump should be united in the country, right? I think that's probably the primary job of the president of the United States, and to lower the temperature in times of crisis. Of course, that's just not Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump doesn't care about the country. Donald Trump cares about himself and enriching himself and, propping up himself and inflating himself.
Congressman, with all due respect, this country is hungry for leaders. And you are an elected member of Congress, and no one's been apprehended yet. I understand what you're saying about political violence, and there has been political violence perpetrated by individuals who identify as on the left. But there's also been political violence perpetrated by those who are clearly on the right, as the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband makes abundantly clear. Please, I am begging you, lead the country from your position of power and try to bring the temperature down. I knew Charlie Kirk personally.
Right.
Charlie Kirk and I disagreed on almost every political issue. Mm-hmm. But what I appreciated about Charlie Kirk is he provided a platform for people like me to speak to a completely different audience and make my case. And I appreciated that about him, and I would like it if members of Congress, both on the left and right, found a way to harbor those types of conversations, both on the House floor, the Senate floor, and also on shows like this.
Well, first off, if anybody is murdering, if anybody is using political rhetoric and using political violence to silence their people that they don't agree with, we should all be against that. We should all push towards curbing that, not just elected officials, but every.
What a non-answer from Tony Gonzalez. Hey, I think all violence is bad and we should all condemn violence. Durr. Anna Kasparian here saying, look, I knew Charlie Kirk personally. This was horrible. We have to find a way to tone down the rhetoric and come together as a country. That's how we reduce political violence, not inflaming the division. Of course, Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump cannot do that, but that is in opposition to what Donald Trump wants.
Everyday individuals should also push for that. And part of that is we got to hold one another responsible and accountable. We can't just say, oh, it was somebody else's fault. All of us play a role in this. And look, I think the president is bringing us together. The fact that, we forget it's 9/11. We forget it's the Memorial Day of 9/11.
He's like, well, that's what Donald Trump is doing. That's precisely the opposite of what Donald Trump is doing. I mean, this is the MAGA piece of it, which is up is down, black is white, right? Oh, but Donald Trump is bringing us together. Yeah.
And where was the president? He was at Yankee Stadium today, shaking hands, bringing life to it. I'm not a Yankees fan, but you see that picture with him and all the Yankees baseball players.
He was also referring to the political left as radical lunatics.
He was at the U.S. Open.
He was at UFC. From both sides of his
president
mouth.
has been very active.
And since his election in 2016, the political rhetoric in this country has devolved further.
Can I ask you to respond to that part of what she's addressing, which is what the president said? When I saw someone say this this week, when you hear people, usually online, say they did this, they did that, when we're talking about one man who is a lunatic shooter, criminal, that is so discordant to a lot of this country they're just normal people who are appalled by this. But when you generalize an awful event like this to a whole half of the country, as President Trump seemed to have done today, you're saying that that's bringing the country together, but a lot of people don't hear that.
What I'm saying is, sadly, there isn't just one incident. This isn't just on a decline. This is a more and more regular occurrence of where there is more and more political rhetoric that is turned into political violence, and somebody is not here. And that somebody today or this week is Charlie Kirk. Who is it going to be next? And the way we curve that out is not by just saying this isn't happening. It's by us going, there is a systemic issue that is happening in our country. And instead of blaming one another, we have to come together.
It is happening.
We're agreement to that. But I think the problem is you, sir, as a congressman, just singled out leftist attacks. And that, of course, leaves out things like the attack on the CDC. Just a few weeks ago. It leaves out lots of other texts. I think the point is, particularly in your position of responsibility, particularly on a day like 9/11, there's an obligation not to try to get political points But to look at the broader cycle and to say we all need to step up, and we all, so am I, sir.
I mean, look at the school shooter at Minnesota. What are the facts in that case?
You apparently don't even recognize the facts around the assassination of the state legislatures.
Look at the fact. Let's start with the alligator nearest to the boat, which was the Minnesota school shooting, right? And what I'm getting at is these aren't just one issue.
No, it's all connected.
They're expanding.
That is exactly right.
All
That's
over the
why
country.
when you, particularly as a member of Congress, focus on one political side, echoing that.
I just said there's no room for any political rhetoric.
That is
I just said there's no room for any political rhetoric that turns into political violence.
100%
left, right. It doesn't matter.
Let me just take one. Let me just take 1 second here.
Well, I have to give kudos to Abby Phillip and Anna Kasparian, which I know a lot of people on the left have soured on Anna Kasparian, but I do think she's good at what she does, regardless of how you feel about everything she says. And I think here she makes excellent points, telling Tony Gonzalez what we need is leadership and not just one-sided rhetoric. That's spot on. And John Avalon here, what he's saying as well, they give this guy Tony Gonzalez opportunity after opportunity to say, yes, there's violence on the right and the left, and we don't agree with that either. But the silence is glaring when it comes to about what about people who align politically left who are being killed and the right wingers who are committing that violence. It's always just, the unspoken part is sort of except when people on the left get shot. Come on. These MAGA types can't bring themselves to do it, either because they believe it or they know that if they do it, Donald Trump will be mad at them. Tony Gonzalez claiming that Donald Trump is uniting the country. It's absolutely flabbergasting. Anna Kasparian says the fish rots from the head down. Perfect. That's precisely it. The President of the United States leads by example. And whatever you thought about Barack Obama, he always tried to calm us down in a crisis. He always tried to bring us together in a crisis with his rhetoric. And this is precisely the opposite of what Donald Trump's instincts lead him to do and what he has always done. John Avalon brings up the attempted murder of Nancy Pelosi's husband, which MAGA has mocked ever since it happened. Don Jr. made fun of it on Twitter like a joke. So, it's more of this hypocrisy that we always see from MAGA. I just, I do a lot of Abby Phillip videos recently. I've started watching this show, and I think she does a fantastic job. This guy is not as slick or as triggering as Scott Jennings or Ben Ferguson when they're on Abby Phillip's show. But they're professional trolls, those two. This guy, Tony Gonzalez, is just a politician, right? He's actually a representative. So what he's more doing the I'm going to sound reasonable and give you my non-answer speak, where I sound authoritative and forceful, but I'm really not saying anything. The words coming out of my mouth are the words that are coming out of my mouth. And if somebody is telling me that the words coming out of my mouth aren't words coming out of my mouth, then I think I disagree with them very strongly about the words that are coming out of my mouth. I mean, it's just nothing. We should all condemn violence. Should we? But as Anna Kasparian points out with this Charlie Kirk thing, they rush to say it was a left-winger that committed this violence. Of course, they now have a suspect in custody. Doesn't seem to be a left-winger to me. He seems to be even further right than the right. Seems ultra-right, and it felt like maybe Charlie Kirk wasn't right enough. It's not clear is my point. The point is that the violence itself is wrong. But they were rushing to align this person politically before they had even caught this person. Well, anyway, I want to know your opinion. I've been doing a lot of Abby Phillip's show. Do you think I should stick with Abby Phillip? You like that? I'm into it. I'm kind of vibing on it. I think she does a great job. I mean, what about Anna Kasparian? Are we ready to forgive Anna Kasparian? I don't know if that's even the right terminology. I feel like Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian sort of had this weird rightward break, and there's some corporate time. I have to confess, I don't even know or understand the whole story. But anyway, let me know what you think about all this in the comments.